Hey guys, it's Horror Free For All, and welcome back to Goosejunkies, episode 46. Long time no see, everyone. As you see, I have a new backdrop. I recently moved into a house, and I have a lot of stuff going on, moving some stuff around. And as you'll see, my bookshelf behind me is a bit in disarray, but I'm glad to be here and being in front of the camera again. And I'm more happy actually to be joined with my fellow co-hosts as always, the Ultimate Goosebumps Man and the Horrorlander. How are you guys doing tonight?
Yo, 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 people and patrons of the night. It is good to see you. It's been so long. I wouldn't be surprised if some of you fans who started watching this show have already married. Maybe you got baby daddies, baby mamas. Maybe you got children now. In that case, tell your baby to shut the hell up because a new Goose Junkies episode is out. So you got to tune in with full attention. But good to see y'all. There is a storm going out, so if at any point, Thor strikes me with Mjolnir, it's okay. We're going to keep it pushing because I'm excited to be back with my boys. Good to see my boys and good to see y'all.
It's good to see you too. How are you doing tonight, Micah?
I'm doing wonderful. It is great to be back. I have missed this so much. It's always so fun to do these podcasts. I am also in a new environment down here in Florida, working in Disney. Very happy, excited about that. Not going to get too much into that, but it's a lot of fun, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So,
That's awesome, and I envy
Very
you in a lot of ways. So tonight, since we ended our last episode, I think in a duology of sorts, talking about like underrated bad episodes of kids horror and the scariest episodes of kids horror. Now we're back on track with more traditional Goose Junkies content. And for this episode, we thought we just would jump right into the trenches of a well-worn idea that's been floated around in many anthology shows, not just kids horror variety, throughout the years, and that is living dolls. Now, we are saving a living doll comparison that we think is a much better showdown, so to speak, for a later episode. But we thought we would test the waters with this one by facing off a relatively obscure yet, I guess, popular episode from the Nightmare Room against an episode of a relatively obscure kids' horror show, Creeped Out. And we're going to be looking at from Creeped Out Slapstick versus the Nightmare Room's Scareful What You Wish For. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have seen all the way through at least once in entirety, casually, Creeped Out and Nightmare Room. So it was kind of a treat for me to come back tonight and just casually rewatch some episodes, not have to read material along with it. I like sometimes when we have that break when we could just watch some episodes. And it's been a long time since I've watched Slapstick, and I think all of our reactions are kind of similar on this, so I think this is going to be kind of a boring way to start. But at the same time, I think we should start here because it can only get better. I feel. So whoever wants to talk about Slapstick from Creeped Out, take it away, and then we'll go into the discussion.
Michael, you want to take it or want me to?
you can go ahead.
Okay. So Slapstick is from the show Creeped Out. Now, I'm not the most familiar with Creeped Out. I've really only experienced the show through the episodes that we've watched. To say so far, I would be impressed. That'd be lying. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. It's definitely to me a serviceable show so far. But going into Slapstick, we basically open up with this main character, this girl, who is dealing with the problem of the fact that she can never really fit in with her friends. She can never really fit into the popularity chain. It's because of the fact that there's a group of popular girls around her neighborhood. It's actually her neighbor who's one of the most popular girls in school. And she can't fit in due to the fact of her parents. Her parents are very embarrassing, very cheesy, very cringy around her. It's very clear that they love her, but the way they love her is by embarrassing her, treating like she's a little girl, and she's getting to that adolescent age where it's all about being cool. You got to fit in, you got to follow the new trends. So she doesn't appreciate it. And what ends up happening is that when she's out and about and she's been asking her parents to get her a new pair of sneakers, they end up getting her some cheaper pair because they can't afford to pay up for the higher version. And the group of popular girls, aka her neighbor and her friends, are out and about watching her and making fun of her. And when they start making fun of her about how her parents are treating her, how they don't have as much money, and kind of riffing on her, the parents stand up, they make a comment, and this in turn embarrasses the main character even more. And she just basically goes away from her parents, upset at the fact that her life can't be the way she wants it to be. And as she's on the beach, she ends up seeing that there's a group of younger kids on the beach who are watching this like kind of makeshift traveling circus puppet show going on. Very slapstick kind of dolls playing with each other type of humor. And she's like, you know what? She just sits down and starts watching it. And as it about wraps up, because it's towards the end of that performance, this boy who's going around and collecting spare change from all the viewers ends up walking up to her. And she explains, like, I got no money. I came at the end of the show. I can't help you. And he's like, no, there's actually something else you can help me with. And it's the fact that the person who runs the show, Mr. Blackteeth, wants to speak with you for a moment because he knows about some of the problems that you've been dealing with just off of looking at you. And right away, she's weirded out. She's like, Mr. Blackteeth, who's this guy talking about? But she ends up entertaining it and goes to the booth. And when she goes to the booth, out comes the ventriloquist dummy, not the human being. Mr. Blackteeth. And Mr. Blackteeth, the ventriloquist dummy, operating off screen, you can't see who's operating them, is basically telling her that, tell me about your problems. Tell me about what's going wrong in your life. And she decides to vent a little bit, tell him about her parents and her situation. And he's like, I can give you a solution, a way that you can get normal parents and get the lifestyle that you want. Just know that you kind of have to be ready for it. Be careful what you wish for. And what ends up happening is he gives her a method where she has to tap on her forehead 3 times and say some line. And when she does it, it's going to magically fix everything. She doesn't believe it. She doesn't trust it. But after she ends up doing it and walks away creeped out, shout out to the title, and she gets back to her house, she sees that now her parents are acting like robots, or you could say acting like puppets, and basically following her every command. And is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is there a lesson to be learned? Do things go awry? You find out as the episode goes on. So this, by no means is a crazy, out there concept. This type of be careful what you wish for concept has been done plenty of times in kids horror. It's a classic, story structure. And the puppet thing has been done before. But we have to look at the most important thing, which is, okay, this episode doesn't do anything unique. So what's the execution like? And I'll be honest, it's not too impressive. The thing about this episode is that, to me, so far with Creeped Out, what's happened is that it just does barely enough to make it serviceable, but it's not memorable and it's not stand out by any means. The parents, for example, are extremely cheesy and cringy, and it gets to the point of being corny, where the dad is like literally talking to this adolescent girl like, oh, you're my little dinky, my little ooh goo goo goo, doing all these things. And when they buy her new shoes, they're like dressed up in their like Cookie Monster pajamas. Like the mom is dressed up in like some Big Bird looking pajamas, and she's out and about. And when they get to buy the shoes, they're like, oh yeah, do a runway walk. And then the dad starts acting like he's a runway director and all these things. It's just like a really like Disney sitcom type of humor where it's just over the top and played up. But again, it's not a Disney sitcom. It's a kids horror show. So seeing that can kind of make it like, this is a little cringy. Um, there's no real stakes throughout the story. When you go into the idea of Mr. Blackteeth, which I'll get into, after this, but the thing about the story is that there's not really any threat level. There's not really anything that the character is kind of going up against that's actually scary, actually something to be of note. No, the entire story is just her basically not appreciating her parents enough. And when this change happens where her parents start acting like puppets, they're not doing anything that's like frightening. Like it's not like you have a scene where she's in her bed in the middle of the night and she sees her parents outside her door looking like puppets and being creepy. No. They're at a party at the neighbor's birthday party, that popular girl, and they're just holding like wine bottles in their hands and just not talking. And people are trying to talk to them and they're just like, no. And then going back and looking at the screen, just really silly stuff. And the girl who's supposed to be friends, trying to become friends with this popular girl, the most that happens with them is like they have some awkward dialogue, and then at the end, the girl just decides to put ketchup all over the main character just for the sake of the plot. Like it wasn't even like it made sense that they were planning this prank on the girl. No, she just out of nowhere grabs a ketchup bottle and starts spraying it on the girl to be a dickhead. Like, okay, this is a little forced. This is a little trying to get the plot along. And the way the story resolves, where the main character goes back to the villain and the villain kind of explains and shows like what's going on about capturing the parents' souls, and she has to find basically she has to become like his underling and replace the previous kid, and she has to find a new victim for him, a victim, just a person who works for him in order for her to be freed and her parents to be freed. You would think like, okay, that's kind of a cool concept. We got something here. We kind of like the mystery and the creepy vibe, except the fact that she finds the next replacement in 5 seconds after the reveal. So it's like, well, damn, she's gonna go back to her parents right away. What was the point of this story? Nothing critical happened. And the villain, which is the third main component of this episode, um, he's creepy in appearance in some scenes. Like when you're inside of the little puppet booth and he's in shadow, he looks creepy. I'll be honest, his voice acting is good. I like the kind of posh gentleman kind of vibe and the creepy nature of him. Does he look the best aesthetically? No, but again, they got a low budget, so you kind of have to let it go. The ventriloquism's not that great, where he'll be laughing out loud, but his mouth is closed. It's not the best work. But in terms of a villain, I really, honestly have no idea what's the point of this villain, and that to me takes me out of caring about the episode. I'm like, why does Mr. Blackteeth exist? What is his point? He wants slappy slaves, but they're not slaves. They're like servants who he just kind of blackmails into working for him, and he doesn't do anything to them. Okay, yeah, he captures their parents' souls, but he doesn't actually do anything to them because, as you see, when the previous kid hands her this random jar, by the way, this jar is random. He hands her this jar, which is like a passing of the torch. The moment that the kid gets out, his parents are magically in front of the entrance and they're walking away happily ever after. So are you like are you supposed to be threatening? Are you supposed to be a villain? You don't do anything to these kids that makes you villainous outside of just like doing a little bit of trickery. So that kind of took me out the episode. Again, it's just a very play by the book type of episode. Reminds me a lot of like Tales from the Dark Side season one, where it'll be weird setups, but even though it's a weird, wacky setups, there won't be much going on, not enough going on to keep you really memorable involving the episode. And they'll be underusing villains, which I'm sure, my partners here in crime are going to be talking about that plenty. So, yeah, I give it a 7 out of 10. Decent. It did enough not to qualify as bad, but it did nowhere near enough to be memorable or even something to praise. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, a lot of great points, man. I don't even know if I have anything to add, but I'm gonna let Micah go to go to go into it next because I want to hear what his thoughts are. I think he'd have a more interesting contribution here than I would.
But yeah, from my opinion, this is a very average, like 5 out of 10, middle of the road kind of kids horror episode. The main gripes is that the setup and the, I guess, meat of the episode feel like two completely separate entities. Like the whole stuff with Mr. Blackteeth is this whole like sentient puppet that's manipulating people and things like that, and then he's just gone for like the whole middle section of the episode, and there's no explanation of it. Like, and then you get like a whole other episode with this like parents' souls being trapped and them being these puppets that can be controlled, which I guess kind of ties to Mr. Blackteeth, but like they're so different concepts. Like Mr. Blackteeth barely has anything to do with the plot. He's just kind of there as the I don't know if MacGuffin is the right word, but like he's just kind of there as the instigator, but does nothing in the actual plot to be considered a threat. Especially when you compare him to other living dummies like, the one we'll talk about later, or, Slappy or any of those ones where they actually are present in the story and are actually a force of fear and a threat. Mr. Blackteeth's just not that. He's in 2 scenes in the episode, and he barely does anything in them to be memorable. And I will say, I think in some ways the parents' performances when they're under that like puppet control can be creepy at times. And I think there are especially the shot where they're like laying in bed when they first are discovered. I think that scene was effectively creepy and seeing how they kind of play that. But again, they do nothing with it. Like Horlander said, they could have done them like standing over the girl's bed or like against her windows or doing something to actually make them scary and make the stakes higher. And they just didn't do that. And again, as I said, yeah, the twist ending is lame because of the fact that it's pretty much resolved immediately. There's no, like, if it just ended with her, like, accepting her fate as this new caretaker and then it ends, it might have been a little bit better. But showing that she's literally going to have the solution to her problem immediately, it's like there's no fear in that, and there's no lasting impact on that idea. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, it's just not a very good episode overall. It was very dull, not a memorable villain, is barely used in the plot, and it's just, yeah, not scary. That's the biggest problem with it.
Yeah.
I think the way you phrased it too was like a better, as well as like like how you brought up the idea that they can be standing over the bed, they can be outside the window. That stuff doesn't cost money, right? We're not asking for things that are going to be out of the budget, take away from the budget. No, all you have to do is just film them in the dark or in a scary shot. So they were really easy fixes. I don't so it kind of makes it a little worse in a sense. Like why didn't you do stuff like that?
Yeah. And I guess throw my hat in the ring. Both y'all brought up pretty much all my problems I have with this episode too. Off the bat, though, I think this episode's message and its intentions is greater than its actual own merit. Right? I do get the appeal of the message of the story to not take your parents for granted. To it has a message about teenage adolescence and how melodramatic that can be, and how woe is me gets in the way, and how you treat your family. You should always put respect at the forefront, and remember that the world doesn't revolve around just you. And if you try to distance yourself or try to control people, and just to do whatever you want, then they lose parts of themselves that actually mean more to you than you actually think. I get the message. However, this episode from start to finish and execution is corny as hell. This has to be top 5 corniest kids horror episodes I've ever seen. Not necessarily because of how cringe the characters are. Okay, the dad is cringy, the mom is cringy, the bully character, the girl, the mean bitch, she's cringy. The main character, though, she is the shining light. But then you get this music, the way it's edited, how it looks like there's certain scenes where she's looking at a pin board of her family montage and her photos of her family, like how touching. But the way the music blends in, it felt like a Disney Channel original movie. And I'm thinking, I'm supposed to be watching a kids horror show. I don't want to be watching a Disney Channel original movie drama, right? That's what it came across as majority of the time. But if it wasn't that, I don't know about y'all, but I thought the first 5 to 7 minutes of this episode felt random. And I don't know if it's the pacing. I don't know if it's just them trying to hit the ground running to get the story going. But you meet these parents, you're like, oh my God, this family is cringe. Next thing you know, you're on a beach. You're like, okay, the cringe is continuing. And then they have a fallout disagreement. She walks on a beach and sees a puppet show on a beach. Okay, so I get that puppet shows are traveling, right? And maybe this is like a local regional thing. But why the hell is there a puppet stand on a beach? Does that correlate any logical sense? No. It just happens to be there for plot's sake. And then we see this puppet, Mr. Black Teeth. He is wearing makeup, y'all. I mean, like he has the goofiest looking hair. I mean, I guess he's kind of creepy in the way he talks, but I don't get anything scary from this guy other than he alludes to the girl that I can give you a gift. Now you have to be ready for it, right? And that signals to us, if you're a well trained kids horror or even anthology horror viewer or reader, be careful what you wish for is in the top 3 most overused tropes in anthology horror. Period. Right? You already know this girl's about to be given a gift, she's going to abuse it, and then there's going to be some morality punch where she has to learn a lesson or overcome adversity to make it right. Right? You already know that's the direction of the story. And then we see the concept, right? We see what the actual episode is doing with the whole parents being controlled, and it's boring. It's just there's nothing new that they do with the concept. You would think that they've had other stories in the past about parents losing their autonomy or parents being taken away from kids and the kids have to rescue parents, that they would find something intriguing to do. I don't know if it's budget, but all it is some mean girl's birthday party that triggers this girl to realize that she was in the wrong. And then she tries to save her parents when she needs to find an answer how to fix it, right? And then the back part, the final third of the episode is really where it gets good, in my opinion. That's the only thing I can actually say I started to really click on with the episode is when she goes back and she finds Mr. Blackteeth, and then he reveals himself to be like this, like, I'm willing to like fuck with you kind of guy, right? And his intimidation factor comes out a little more. But like y'all said, like especially what Shiv said, it rushes through it so much, and there's like a whole context dump with the guy from the beach from earlier, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of clever. I actually like that because I saw something like that coming, but I didn't necessarily see him being involved, and I was like, oh, that's clever writing. Okay, that's cool to include him. But how the story wraps up is so convenient, right? And it cliffhangs on the idea in an existential way, like Twilight Zone would do, on this girl's dilemma. Do I pass this thing on to this next guy to save my family, or do I hold on to this curse? And it leaves it up to interpretation to the viewer what she's going to do. I mean, it is what it is, right? It's not cool. There's nothing new here. It's existential horror, but the emotions are there enough for me to say that it's competent at least. This is far from a bad episode. This episode offers a lot more to say than some other middling episodes that I've seen, and it has a lot more merit to it because it at least tries, right? But it doesn't succeed at anything that it does because of how vapid it can be in certain areas. So all in all, I'm kind of where Shiv is at with it. I have it at a 3.6 out of 5 stars for me, which is average because I do the curve. That 3.6 to me is average, or 7.2 out of 10. I mean, it's kind of middle of the road for kids horror, but there's way better concepts that are done similarly and other IPs that you can check out over this one. But you can also do far worse than this. You could, really, realistically. So, yeah, it's just kind of there, sadly.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that a good way they could have maybe added some more stakes to the story and made it somewhat unique is like because of the idea of them being puppets. Like, what if the parents slowly start turning into legitimate puppets? And then, like, it just adds that stakes of like a ticking clock element. Like, if she doesn't reverse this in a certain time, they'll be stuck as like wooden puppets forever or something like that. Just to like add something to make the stakes a little higher.
Yeah. I actually think it would be kind of clever, now that you mention it, when they're going through that, part of the story where they're just inanimate, sitting on the couch watching TV, like seeing their mouths like start to become like with puppet makeup, and you start seeing strings sprout from their backs going through the ceiling or something, and then you see like a from a top down, like this puppet guy is like starting to come into the house and turning him into his puppets, and then the parents disappear, and she's like, "Where the hell did my parents go?" And then she finds that he's turned them into actual puppets in his show. That would have been cool because that would have showed kind of like in a literal way what he's doing to them. But the story doesn't spend enough focus on the horror side of that, right? And by the way, when we meet the parents as puppets, right? Spoiler alert in case you haven't seen the episode, they act so bizarre. Did y'all notice that? They're like, "You need to help us," and then they just disappear. And then they come in, "Please help us," and then they go hide again. I'm like, do y'all really want to be helped, or are y'all just being like coy with this all? Like, it doesn't seem like the parents have much involvement in the climax to help themselves get out of the situation. And I think part of that is that there's so much ambiguity with the villains, like powers and motifs, that we don't understand the stakes. We like Shiv said, we don't actually understand what he's capable of because it's not made to be transparent in that way.
Another better fix to it would have been like, instead of just letting the kids go off like scot free after they find like a new victim, it could have been a thing where like Mr. Blackteeth is like, okay, you want a way to get out, save your parents, but it's gonna come with the cost. And instead of the parents being puppets at the show, the kid has to sacrifice themselves to become a puppet at the show. Like that's an easy way to make it more like, oh, that's messed up. Like the fact that, okay, yeah, you can save. Are you willing to save your parents by you becoming one of my puppets? Is that a way you can do it? That would have had more stakes. But the idea of them just walking away scot free after finding the next kid who's got their own, adolescent problems, like, come on, man, that just makes you not get scared by anything.
Yeah. I actually thought that when I watched it, I was like, they could have. I thought they were going to go that angle because I forgot the twist. But then then when I saw it, I'm like, oh. Oh, I mean, it's not terrible. It's just kind of like, they could have gone a little further, at least explored what the girl was willing to do instead of leaving it up to the interpretation. This is one of the few times where I'm like, it's not a terrible way to go out on the episode, but I kind of wish they went a bit further with that and pushed what the character would have done, because I think that would have been actually more interesting to know than not to know, you know?
Yeah,
That could
they
have
just did
actually
the
helped
bare
score the episode higher.
they did the bare minimum to pass.
Yeah, they did the bare minimum here. And I was actually reading up on this before we hopped on. I actually saw that this is actually one of the more popular episodes from the show, which, I mean, if we're going on like the messages, I can kind of get that if you like that hoity-toity type of stuff. But to us, you're asking the wrong crowd. So if you're a fan of Slapstick out there, we're sorry. We're just kind of milk toast with it, but we don't think it's bad. I mean, none of us said it's bad. It's just kind of
We just
middle of
got
the
high
road average.
standards. We've experienced too much to have higher standards.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But if this was like one of your first kids horror episodes, I totally get why you think this would be cool. Like I get that. So it's not necessarily like a taste thing. It's more of an exposure thing, I feel. So yeah, which brings us to the, I guess, fan favorite Nightmare Room episode that we have yet to talk about. Fun fact about this episode: the writer of this episode is actually the reason why Nightmare Room became like an open forum as a TV show. So, fun fact: when Nightmare Room as a TV show was, I guess, cooked up, the initial idea was just to adapt the books. But when they asked Naomi Jansen, I think the writer of this episode, to write a script, she thought that she was being asked to write her own story. So she wrote a concept that came to her own mind and submitted it, and they loved it so much. They're like, yeah, we might as well just make this into an episode. This was too good. And that is Scareful What You Wish For. Scareful What You Wish For was not a Nightmare Room book, and it's a part of a handful of episodes in the show in its only season that were not adapted from books. I think you have this one, Tangled Web, Four Eyes, and School Spirit, which are the 4 TV show exclusive stories. And based on people's reactions about the show over the years, it seems like this one and maybe Don't Forget Me are probably the 2 most well-known ones, next to Dear Diary, I'm Dead, that has Drake Bell in it. And this is the one that has Shia LaBeouf. In case you've ever seen anything with Shia LaBeouf, you cannot mistake him in here. You have the underrated 90s television mom Betsy Randall playing Shia LaBeouf's mom in here. She was the mom on Boy Meets World. That show was a staple of the 90s. Seeing her here is a treat. And you also have a young Dylan and Cole Sprouse, who went on to have famous Disney Channel careers in the Sweet Life of Zack and Cody franchise, playing our titular villain. Well, not titular, but our main villain of the story, Buddy. Now, what's this story about? If you've never seen Scareful What You Wish For, it's about an 8th grader who is ready to move on to the next stage in life. He's graduating 8th grade. He's looking forward to going to high school, and he's packing up his room and his old possessions with his buddy. And throughout throwing out his possessions, they're signified to the audience that there's something moving inside this box, and we don't know what is inside this box that's been put in to his garage. But when our main character, who's played by Shia LaBeouf, is at school, he notices that there's this little kid in a blue overall, blue and white striped shirt, who goes by the name Buddy. And he introduces himself to Shia LaBeouf and his friend group, saying that his name is Buddy and that he's his best friend. And the kids kind of laugh it off. And then he's like, what are you talking about, kid? No, you're not my best friend. This guy's my best friend. And we see that the kid has like a flip switch. He's like, what do you mean I'm not your best friend? And then we find out early on in the story that our main character's best friend is allergic to strawberry jam. And they're at lunch eating, and he has an allergic reaction and falls to the floor. We think that something's seriously wrong. It turns out that somebody put strawberry jam on his sandwich. We later find out that it perhaps belongs to this Buddy kid, right? And as the story progresses, The main character starts to notice that this buddy kid is coming after his friends. After he goes home and he's like buddy, and, and he looks through this box and he finds this buddy doll, and he starts to put two and two together that this buddy doll might be coming to life, right? And it's confirmed to him while he's at school and his friends hanging up a banner for this eighth grade party celebration for graduation that Buddy is pretty much hell bent on coming after all of his friends to isolate this kid and make Buddy his best friend again. And, she has a nasty fall on the ladder. And this sets him off over the edge, right? Now, we haven't talked about Betsy Randall, but Betsy Randall, who plays the loving mom in this story, early on in the episode, we see her watching some home videos of her son at a young age, looking for some stuff to share at the eighth grade graduation party. And she seems pretty invested in our protagonist's life, right? And she seemed that we get this vibe that she is very atypical of your average kid's horror parent. Like she's going to do the right thing by her kid, right? And we see this very emotional breakdown from our character when he gets home and he's really mad at the buddy doll, knowing that it's him causing this harm to his friends. And we see him slam the doll on the bed and rip its head off. And then we see in a huge range of emotion Betsy Randall come in to hug him, also crying. And we get caught up to speed that she's taken him to a therapist at his school, or I guess a counselor that's acting as his therapist, to talk with him about his issue. And in a very realistic way, Shia LaBeouf is able to carry this narrative over, saying that, look, I know you think I'm crazy, but this doll is alive. I don't know how to explain it, and I know you're not going to believe me, but I need you to listen to me. This is what's going on. And I'm like, damn, this shit is dark as hell. Like, why is this shit so emotional and dark? And then we get the jump scare of all jump scares from this show when we see Buddy in his new form after he got deformed after being manhandled by Shia LaBeouf, and that's how he looks for the rest of the episode. Like, hi, I'm Buddy, I'm your best friend, and his shoulder looks about as tall as his headline here. Very, very, very shocking stuff, I guess, if you were a kid. Which plays into the final act, and we find out in kind of like a Deus Ex Machina kind of way of how Buddy came into the situation. Because by this point in the episode, especially if you're a first time watching, you're like, okay, well, how is this doll coming to life, going from doll form back to human form? And you kind of learn the answer by the end. This is Nightmare Room. It does have some poor pacing. It could spend a few more minutes here and there, kind of really divulging into a little more detail. But we find out essentially how this all became a thing, and we find out what's going to happen to our character, our main character at least. And let's just say, for Nightmare Room standards, it's actually a pretty, clever twist. It's just the execution that is kind of wonky. But in a nutshell, that's what you're going to expect out of the story. So first and foremost, I think for Nightmare Room, this probably is the best episode. If we're gonna like top down look at it, this has everything you could want in a kid's horror story. And there's also some things here that you really should want in a kid's horror story that you don't often get. Right? You got a great kid protagonist with a good head on his shoulders. He has a great likability to him. He didn't ask for any of this. He didn't deserve karmic justice or anything. He's just a kid going through something very cerebral, very specific to him. So the whole story feels super intimate, and that creates this vibe that you can't really get unless you get a kid's horror story that feels this way, where you have somebody intimately coming at you. It's hard to describe, but it really does work here. And you have this mystery element about Buddy, and like, how is he going from this doll form to this human form? And that kind of holds you throughout the story, because it's like, okay, so he's going from this creepy doll, which, by the way, there are some shots with this doll in this episode, y'all. It straight up looks like the Undertaker with his eyes rolling to the back of his head. Oh my God, that is freaky shit, y'all. And I'm surprised they made it look as good as they did. Thumbs up to the camera person for that. That was fantastic, right? And I forgot how well that's held up, right? But the design of Buddy can be kind of goofy, but at the same time, once you see what Dylan and Cole Sprouse are able to do with like his physical presence, you can kind of pick up on the vibe, especially in the second half, that they're actually willing to push the envelope. Like this, he's implied to have a broken neck and broken limbs, and was like he's basically just hanging on. That would have freaked me out if I was a kid watching it. I'm pretty sure I probably saw a glimpse of it when I was younger when this show was out. But I can't remember cognitively watching the episode. But if I would have remembered that, that would have stuck with me for a long time. And that's pretty good stuff for a kids horror episode. But really, what shines here is what the mom connection involved in the story, her being actually proactive, listening to her kid, and how raw and real that really does hit in that mid portion. You that has to be like some of the best moments in kids horror television history right there. Like you really feel in that moment what's going on. And you can put aside whether you think the concept is goofy, but you understand exactly what that kid is going through, and it's perfectly done, right? Where it falls apart for me though is kind of like that last third where it's getting to the rushed things, and there's more questions than answers. Like, okay, we're gonna have to get into spoilers with this, but I'm sure y'all will touch on this. The origin of how Buddy becomes alive, right, is at Dylan, I think that's his, Shia LaBeouf's character's 6th birthday party. We're watching a home video, this is a pretty good framing element in how to explain this as expository information, right? We see in the recording that he has, rinky-dink birthday party magician with a magic wand at a birthday, and because he's 6 and because he's a kid, him making a wish that his doll will come true will, I guess, empower the magician's wand to make the abracadabra come true. He literally says abracadabra alakazam and touches the doll on the head, and that's what brings him to life. That's how silly this shit is. But you had to put the disbelief at the door based on the explanation there. And I'm not going to lie, it is kind of cheap. And then the ending, it's kind of rushed. And it's also kind of a little convenient that, some parties involved throughout the story start to realize that Dylan's telling the truth. They end up at the house. We could have gotten more of that, but since it's a kids show, TVY7, they couldn't show like Dylan transforming and all that. And if you've seen the ending, you know what I'm talking about, the whole doll twist. It leaves a lot of, like I said, it leaves more questions than answers. I'm like, okay, well then how did Buddy turn him into a doll? That I thought the wish was he can make Buddy come to life. I didn't know Buddy can turn people into dolls. It doesn't make sense. But it's just something you have to roll with. But other than that, I think this is a fantastic episode. For what it is, for this show's standards at least, it's not great. I want to put it like a 4.5 or higher. I'd probably, with my ceiling, give it a 9 out of 10. But this time around, I think I'm going to settle with an 8.8 out of 10 or a 4.4 out of 5 stars. I think it's a B+. It's very good. Teetering on that greatness. It just needs that extra care to put it into greatness, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Mikey, you want to go or you want me to go?
I can go. So yeah, I love this episode. This is the first time I've ever actually seen it all the way through. I've always seen like, bits and pieces of it, or seen like, I think King Newsme did a video on it. So that's kind of how I've seen the episode until now. But rewatching it all the way through, I think it was an excellent episode of kids horror. Like easily like one of the better ones I've seen in a while. And I think part of that goes to just the performances and the acting. Because like Shia LaBeouf has his goofy moments, but like for like a early like child, like I guess young teen actor, he's really damn good in this episode. Like he really does sell the emotions and the fear and the anger and like everything that this character is feeling. He sells those emotions so well. And like the chemistry he has with the mom, also to mom, blanking on the actress's name, but she is excellent in this as well. Her performance, again, as Austin is kind of, hinted at, is very emotional and very powerful. And it really does feel like a mother who genuinely is worried for her son and wants what's best for him, and is seeing that he's having this mental breakdown as he's going through these struggles of going from teen or, adolescent to teen. And that's something that, I think a lot of parents can relate to in a lot of ways, even as someone who, isn't a parent and probably won't be for a few more years yet, it's still something that, it's still those ideas that I think any parent can go through, and anybody who I guess wants to be a parent kind of prepares themselves for. And it's just, and even like, from the perspective of, being a kid turning into a teen, just kind of having that phase of your life where you're wanting to push away all the old things that are kind of deemed as childish, and, kind of acting more mature, and maybe maturing a bit too fast, and kind of trying too hard to distance yourself from your childhood. And I think it just executes that really well, despite some of the rush elements near the end, which I do agree it's a little rushed at the end. But I think all of that emotional stuff and the story beats are handled well. Buddy is a really creepy villain. I think that Cole and Dylan Sprouse did a great job for being how young they were. They really do play the creepy kid very well. And I think that it's just, I don't know, it's a very fun way to do it too. It's a very fun twist on your normal living doll story where it's a doll who can turn from a human child into doll form and kind of going back and forth. I think that's a fun twist. Maybe get around some of the budget of, not having to do an actual puppeteer living doll because, Nightmare Room is a very low budget show. So I think it's a very clever way to work around that. And yeah, there's really creepy moments with the actual Buddy doll, like the scene of its eyes rolling back into its head, or like there's just other things like that just make Buddy feel like a genuine threat and make him feel unsettling. And of course, the dark stuff he goes to trying to get rid of Dylan's friends is pretty messed up as well. Like basically attempting to murder them. Like he literally, again, triggers an allergic reaction on Dylan's friend that could have possibly killed him. And like, knocking his other friend off the ladder wasn't as bad because like most likely you wouldn't have died from that, but like that still could have seriously injured her. And it's just like the fact that this doll is willing to go to such demented ways to try and isolate Dylan makes him much more of a threat and makes him much more of a creepy presence. And despite some of the convoluted, confusing nature of the ending is still dark as hell. Like what happens to Dylan, like the fact that dude's just, he has no choice. He is going to be Buddy's friend whether he wants it or not. And it's just like that last shot of just seeing the two of them as dolls together is such an unsettling image. And I think it is very effective. And I don't know, for me, it works, even despite some of the, pacing issues with it. But overall, I think this episode is really well done. I would probably give it a 9 out of 10 personally. I think it was definitely one of the better kids horror episodes I've seen in a long time.
Okay. Right there where I'm at with it, basically. I'm curious to see what Shiv has to say about this.
Yeah. I mean, this one is one that I've seen before, but it was low quality. So shout out to Tubi. I get to watch Nightmare Room episodes now in high definition, so that's good. Yeah, this one to me, after watching it, I also don't think it's in the great range, but I have to say it's a very good episode. And I think that the reason why this episode I think resonated with me more on the second run is it very much appeals to me the idea that it feels like a short story translated to the screen, and that's how I kind of treat it because it is an original story. A lot of the time with Nightmare Room and other episodes, even from Goosebumps, they'll be taking entire books and making them into 20-minute episodes. It feels like a lot gets cut out, a lot of context is missing and all that. This one very much feels like I opened up a short story collection. This is a short story and a well done short story, and I got to watch it translated to screen from beginning to end. So that's kind of why I got a more favorable opinion of it. To me, the characters I think is a very strong point. You guys mentioned it, but Shia LaBeouf is a great kids horror actor, a kid actor. Even before his movies roles with Transformers and stuff like that. I knew him from the 2003 movie Holes because I used to always replay and air on TV. So I saw him when he was a kid on Holes. So seeing Scareful What You Wish For as a kid actor, he has a great range of emotions, and I think people don't appreciate enough this aspect until you watch other kids horror TV shows, that the banter between him and his best friends felt very natural to me. Like when I see him interacting with his best friend, who I can't pinpoint where I've seen his best friend from, but I think he's also been in some other projects that I recognize him. They have very natural dialogue with each other. Makes you easily invest and kind of root for these guys. I'm like, okay, I believe these guys are a real friendship, especially when we all saw The Howler, where they have no chemistry at all. This is very refreshing to see. the mom being a supportive role, taking her kid seriously. The fact that he's not going down the annoying "you gotta believe me" route, which is what most of these characters do. Now he takes it very realistic, and I like it. I have a soft spot for Dylan and Cole Sprouse. Zach and Cody's one of my favorite Disney sitcoms of all time. I love it. I've always loved the Sprouse twins. And, I like the fact that they cast them. To me, it's brilliant because, the number one thing that people used to say about the Sprouse twins is that, oh, they're so cute. They look like dolls. They're almost like picture perfect doll, cute kids. So to make them into an actual living doll, I'm like, that's a really good casting choice because they were always thought of as this picture perfect group. And you see him being creepy, Dylan and Cole's spouse is being creepy throughout the episode. Particularly the creepy thing to me is when him and Shia LaBeouf first interact. And he basically tells him in a nice way, like, fuck off, little kid. And you see the Sprouse twin going around the corner and he's dragging the backpack. And when he's dragging the backpack with that pouty face, like he's thinking about something hard, I'm like, that to me was creepy because it almost looks like not only is the kid throwing a tantrum, but I don't want to take it to an extreme, but it's almost like, that school threat kind of badge. It's like that kid is like, dragging that backpack like he's up to no good. And I'm like, what is this kid doing? And then I saw, the strawberry jelly thing. I was like, wow, he tried poisoning the kid. He tried killing the kid. Like it shows that he's very possessive. And I think that's a really good theme because usually the kid is possessive of the doll. Now the doll is possessive of the kid. It's a really good flip on that idea. Simple but effective. And to me personally, I know the logic is kind of, wonky as to how Buddy comes to life. But again, I treat it like a short story brought to screen, where short stories don't need as much like context or as much like concrete details behind how things work. To me, in my opinion, the whole episode, my big gripe outside of the pacing, which I'll talk about, which kind of held it back, was like, okay, yeah, he's creepy, but like, why is he the way he is? Like, why is this doll coming to life? And the episode was approaching the end, and I didn't remember anything about the second half. So when I'm watching the episode, I'm like, okay, we're getting to the last few minutes. Like, are they never going to explain how Buddy came about? And to me, the whole use of the home video and the family watching in the living room where they don't know where Shia LaBeouf's character is at is so good to me. That was so effective to me because it was like that moment where like this is supposed to be, and I'm used to home videos and we're all used to them, so it's something that's supposed to be very nostalgic. I think it's very effective that all the parents are smiling, the kids are smiling, like, wow, look at his character when he's 6 years old, and even the friends joking like, did you give him the video where I fell down and my pants slipped or stuff like that? Like they were doing jokes like that. And then you see when you see the energy shift in the atmosphere and the music and the characters when Buddy comes on screen. And the mom's facial expression changed, the best friend's facial expression changed, and I got like a sense of dread, which is unique for me. I was like, why am I getting like an actual sense of dread when Buddy came on screen? And when they revealed the magician, it became like an aha moment, but I'm like, oh, that is creepy. Like because you got to immerse yourself within the mom and the best friend at the same time that the mom and the best friend are piecing together things and realizing, oh wait, it's like that Punisher scene, like wait, like they're realizing that this is a really like he was telling the truth the whole time. And when they start hauling ass up there, I feel the tension, I feel the stakes, I feel like yes, there's a sense of urgency, and then you get that reveal, and that to me was like Buddy claimed what was his. It's like you didn't believe it, you didn't save your kid on time, and that guilt comes of like, oh my god, we should have believed him, oh my god, we should have done something. The same appeal to, at the Night of Living Dummy 2, the book, where the parents get involved with trying to capture Slappy in the act. They realize, like, oh my God, we should have trusted our kids. This is our fault. We should have been helping our kids from the beginning. Like, that's the level of not only parental protection, but the idea that parents are not perfect. They slip up. The only difference is when you slip up for yourself, only you're getting harmed. But actually, in this case, the one you loved ended up, it cost him his life. No spoilers, but it cost him big stakes. So I found that really effective. So I give it an 8.5 out of 10. The only negative I really have is the pacing. I think it's a little bit too fast with the transitions. I think it needed some slower pacing, some more fleshing out. But honestly, I think that the way they revealed the background of Buddy through home video, where it's not an exposition dump, it is you are finding out the secret while they're finding out the secret. That builds immersion, that builds atmosphere, and I really appreciated that as like a last minute aha moment, but it's too late. So yeah, overall, very good job.
Yeah, I really have to applaud Naomi Jensen, because I haven't read the script of Scareful What You Wish For, but you can clearly tell that everything in the beginning had set up and payoff by the end, right? You knew that there's going to be a setup with him being eighth grade, graduating, moving on to the next stage in life. He's throwing out old things from his past, but something from his past is now trying to come claim for him to hold on to his past, right? This whole episode could be considered a metaphor about holding on to your past. And sometimes your past can never escape you, right? And sometimes it can literally eat you, or in this case, turn you into a doll, right? So like you become your past, right? Or you're so enveloped, it takes over your life, right? I like that this story explored that avenue with it, or it has something more thematic going on. I love how it's framed with the mom looking at the old home videos. It's not just something that's in the store. No, it matters in a big way. Like we all brought up, that way that climax starts and unfolds with them watching the home video. You have to see it to really to understand how good it is. It's honestly one of the best things I think to ever come out of kids horror. Next to the middle portion of this episode, which I keep coming back to, right? That whole treatment of how the mom handles Dylan's character is something that you just never, ever, ever see in kids horror. I think I can maybe count on less than 3 times I've seen that happen in kids horror where parents take that stuff that seriously and actually care for the kid. Because most of the time, parents are obstacles to kids in kids horror. They're something of more of a nuisance or a plot convenience or contrivance, even, right? That impedes logic, that impedes stuff from continuously happening, right? And sometimes we often find ourselves bitching about these parents. They can sometimes be awful. They can sometimes be so idiotic that it kind of takes you out of the story a bit, right? But then you get parents like Betsy Randall's character here, who is in tune with her kid, that is so involved in the story that she actually plays a role in the climax, which hardly ever happens either, right? Especially when you get this dark ending of the kid. You never see the parents' reaction to this. It's always just from the kid's perspective. That was intriguing. And to see a mother's reaction along with one of his best friends, seeing what's become of him, that's haunting, right? And like you don't even have to be a parent to understand how that probably feels for them, right? Especially for Betsy Randall's character. And like I said, going back to the twist, for me, I don't necessarily think the ending is like a whole negative, but I think what Shiv said and like kind of what I said in tandem here, the pacing and some needing some fleshing out would have easily fixed that, right? This could have been a
Mhm.
two-part episode. I know Camp Nowhere got a two-part episode. I actually think that this would have been beneficial because I really dig the concept of this because of that simple inversion. They had enough room to play with Buddy here, I feel, and like go into a little more of his shenanigans and made it more large scale. But they didn't have the budget. This is Nightmare Room. They reused the same school for every episode, so you can't really get too far with it. Um, Outside of that, I can't really think of anything else to really make the story pop or improve it, other than for what it is, for what it was able to do, despite its setbacks, it's phenomenal. And you really should check it out if you're a kids horror aficionado and you haven't seen it before.
There is only one nitpick though, and I didn't take points off just because I didn't think it was that important. But I did think like, well, that kind of doesn't make that much sense. It's like I understand he was out of commission the whole episode, but at the end when the girl and the mom gets up to go search for Shia LaBeouf and kind of pick it together, in my head I was thinking like, where's the other best friend? Like he's just sitting on the couch still. He hasn't decided to look for his friend Shia LaBeouf. Now, granted, he was out of commission, but at the same time, he was there when they first met Buddy, and I assume Shia LaBeouf has kind of caught him up and maybe spoken to him. Because remember, when Buddy was confronting him, he didn't say the girl was his best friend. He said, no, no, this guy is my best friend. So your best friend's still sitting on the couch and hasn't gotten up when the mom and the girl are panicking. So the girls understand what's going on, but your ass is still on the couch watching home videos. Like, come on, bro. That to me was like, I was like, why didn't his best friend get up and try looking for him? So that was a little nitpick. I was like, okay, whatever.
Some best friend, right?
Yeah, exactly.
My friend could be in danger. Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he was out of commission, so he might not be all the way caught up to what was going on because Shia LaBeouf did talk more to the girl about Buddy the second time around, but I mean, still, if that's my best friend, man, I don't care what's going on. If I see his mom and the other girls panicking, I'm getting up and checking too.
And it's kind of sad because we never got a second season of Nightmare Room, and I'm wondering if like writers like Naomi Jensen was like given more stories to write, what she could have also cooked up in that show. Because if this was that good, imagine if she got her hands on some more writing ability to create more new content for the show. I think that would have been kind of fascinating
We
because
would definitely we would have more evidence favoring the idea of original content. If the second season came out and had good stuff, because that's been the main debate with stuff like Goosebumps, where Goosebumps always relied on adaptations. So the few times it did original content with that R.L. Stein project, people were like, "Oh, we don't want it." But if Nightmare Room had continued and dropped a lot of fan favorite original content, it would have played more into the favor of original content for adaptation shows. So.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's also part of the allure of it at the same time. It's like you can only get this from the show, so it makes it that much more imperative to go
Exclusive
experience it.
content, basically.
It's exclusive content, exactly. And that's what I've always said that what Goosebumps should have thrived for in the 90s. They should have thrived for more new content so that way they weren't competing with themselves in the books. They could have had homegrown content in the show to make it worthwhile for fans to go see the show and kept homegrown content exclusive to the books so that way they could have gone and experienced the books too.
Hey, listen, if Naomi Jensen is still around, someone's listening, go get her recruited for Goosebumps or some other kids' horror stuff. She needs a second shot.
Absolutely. And if she has any other out there, I'm always down to check it out and see what she got cooking up. So I think in terms of this comparing Nightmare Room to Creeped Out in this scenario, it seems like a runaway. And I think we're safe to say that we're going to declare Scareful What You Wish For the winner. And I think for reasons as we discussed, it's better. It's better acted, better characters, better concept, right? More
Similar,
memorable.
but superior in every way.
Yeah, superior, right? And 9 times out of 10, it always comes down to execution. No offense to the idea of the slapstick episode. I think it had good intentions. It's just average, kind of weak execution, right? So that's where we're at. Sorry to all the fans of Slapstick out there and stands of Creeped Out if you are out there. Hopefully one day Creeped Out can get a win. Hopefully. We'll see when that happens. I think we actually probably already gave one, didn't we? Didn't we say that the baby episode beat Strain Peas?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
but
Okay, we've already given one W. Okay,
yeah, but that was Coughing Baby versus Coughing Baby. Forget the hydrogen bomb.
literally in this case.
Yep.
Coffin Baby versus Coffin Baby, absolutely.
Strain Peas isn't exactly a high bar to clear.
Yeah, it's a very low bar, to be fair.
Very, very low. So because we thought this would be a fun discussion because we haven't done a discussion in a while, and because of this whole like fiasco going on with House of Shivers Book 8 being a new dummy sequel, and because we talked about living dolls come to life essentially in this episode, we thought it'd be fun to kind of talk about overused monster or villain concepts in kids horror, right? And it goes without saying that obviously the first one that comes to mind is the living doll trope, right? Living dolls this, living dolls that. Now we've seen some really great examples out there in the ether, like Night of the Living Dummy 3's episode, or Really You from Haunting Hour, or you can read a handful of Slappy stories from Goosebumps, right? Scareful What You Wish For in this case. But it's so overdone, and I think it's overdone more times than not in that franchise kind of way, where like you'll see like Lily D in Haunting Hour getting a sequel randomly because she has franchise ability, right? Or Slappy getting, I don't know how many books are we on for Slappy right now, 27. Slappy in 27th umpteenth story, featured in every season of the show, featured in every movie, right? Overused. What about Living Dolls makes sense for kids horror, right? Let's just talk about that.
Um, I think the thing about living dolls is just it's the idea. First of all, synonymous with kids is toys. Toys is synonymous with kids. It's always going to be synonymous with kids. So it's a very easy idea to take. Okay, what do kids all relate to? Well, they all relate to toys. Toys is something that every kids can relate to. So what if your toy comes to life, right? At the same time, a wooden doll, like specifically talking about a ventriloquist dummy or even just dolls that girls have and stuff, they often treat it like a second child, like it's an extension of the kid. A lot of the time, instead of having an imaginary friend, they put their own imaginary friend imbued in the doll, which in a sense is like you could, if someone was really smart, they could make that into like a possession angle thing. Like your imaginary friend, your conscious is inside of that. But it's the idea that it's an extension of the kid. Oftentimes, for parents, when a kid has a ventriloquist dummy or they have a doll, the kid also wants you to treat the dummy like it's a sibling, like it's a one that you have to take care of. So I think that idea of like it's something that's human-like but not human makes it kind of easy to do. Also, we can just address the elephant in the room. Cue that meme of the elephant in your corner just saying "address me." It's the fact that Slappy's so popular, right? These dummy stories sell like hotcakes, and a lot of the time, kids horror authors are just going to look at what sells. What is the easy way for us to get attention, to get clicks, to get a positive response, and the dummy thing is what's done for it. I think the real thing that determines like what makes a dummy story or a living doll story more interesting is like what do you do with the concept, right? Like what's the extent that you draw towards it? What's the extent you do with it? Everyone's a fan of the Living Dummy 3 episode where Slappy was turning people into wooden dolls. Night of the Puppet People. Here the idea of Scareful What You Wish For. It's the idea that this kid can actually become a human. That's something we've not seen. We've not seen that where the dummy through magic can become a little kid, move around, do what it needs to, and then revert back to a dummy, right? Most of the time when Slappy's walking around, I mean, he's still a wooden dummy, so people are going to look and be like, the hell is that walking around? No. Here it's a little kid, so everyone's going to be like, oh, who's this cute little kid? Not knowing what he actually is. It's like a mischievous god Loki kind of thing where they shapeshift and, do that stuff. So that's interesting. Um, this is adult horror, but even, when I always think about like, puppet potential, but, Curran has a book, a novel called Puppet Graveyard, where it was like a Slappy riff, but then the main character went to the ventriloquist house and there was like Frankenstein experiments of like humans being replaced by doll parts. And there was puppet strings on the second floor, like spider webs, and goes to the attic. And there's a puppeteer there, which is the dead mom with spider legs that are puppet legs and all types of freaky body horror. That type of stuff makes it unique. We're like, okay, it's a puppet, but you make it into body horror, you make it into freaky experiments, you make it into that. That's what makes it unique. But of course, with kids horror, there's a thing that we'll get into when we talk about some of the other more popular, villains. But it's very easy to be lazy. Kids horror kind of has a low standard. It's like, if you just do this, it's gonna sell. You'll get by and you can get away with it. So I think that's why it's so popular is that we don't have to do much with it, and if we don't do much with it, we're not going to get in trouble.
Hmm. And I think it's because the way you said it is because it's so bankable. That's why it's franchisable, right? That's
Yeah.
why you see 20 plus slappy stories, but you don't see 20 plus haunted mass stories. There's only so many things you can do with a haunted mass story, but with dummies, it's almost kind of like a slasher, right? You can just do the same thing over and over and over again, and then if people really like that same thing, they're going to keep buying it and keep eating it up. And then there are people that like a little bit of different. That's why, you look at Friday the 13th, this is the perfect comparison to the Dummy franchise. One, two, and three, pretty much the same thing, for the most part. You get to the fourth one's kind of interesting. You're starting to get into a little more different territory. Then by part five, part six, part seven, you're getting into some out there territory. Well, actually inverted for Slappy's case because of Return of the Living or Revenge of the Living Dummy. But You get out there ideas with Slappy and Kids Horror, right? Or in the case of Scareful What You Wish For, Really You really isn't too far off from other doll stories that you see in Kids Horror, like Broken Dolls from Tales or other, doll stories that you can find in um, those three story collection series or other authors' living doll stories. But what makes Really You stand out is the performances with like Bailey Madison. So I think a lot of it sometimes has less to do with the doll and more so with the ancillary characters, like the protagonists and what you're able to do with them, and who you cast in roles if it's a show. Or maybe in the case of Dummy 2, Dummy 2 is pretty much a stock standard living doll story, but the monologue with Amy Kramer is next level good for a book, right? So sometimes that also matters, if not more, than what you do with the dummy.
Well, even Really You. So I think Really You is also a differentiating factor outside of the performance. We know the performance is great, but it was the idea of harping on the American Girl doll thing, where it's the idea of I can replace my daughter with a doll that looks exactly like her, and that doll unknowingly has sentience to try to replace her. So it was the idea of can I replace my kid? What is American Doll really? Stuff like that. So that's what's called Really You. Like who's really you? Who's really my daughter? This thing or my daughter? So
Yeah, good point. Yeah, it is trying something different, you know, and
it's just a
that
slight tweak.
it's a slight tweak to the formula, but the saying same suit, different tie, right? She's
Yeah.
got a different tie on.
Yep. And also at the same time, like, I mean, the kind of obvious answer to this question is like dolls are just inherently creepy. I think a lot of people are just unsettled by them. So
Yeah.
I think it just kind of makes that a very easy trope to tie into. And like, even I don't even argue, like, I think a lot of this trend started back in like the 50s and 60s, like Twilight Zone. You had
Yeah.
Talkie
Yeah,
Tina and you had the dummy. Both,
yeah, and then you had the Night Gallery episode too with that scary, creepy ass doll too. Oh God, what was that one called? Oh, if you've never seen the Night Gallery episode too, you should watch that. But yeah, you got a point there too. Like it goes back.
It's no different to how Five Nights at Freddy's blew up too. Five Nights at Freddy's blew up just because people always found animatronics creepy, especially those old Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. That's literally what it played off of. So it's a human fear.
yep. And then I think especially then, yeah, now and once you started getting into more modern mainstream horror, like Chucky. Chucky is like,
Yeah,
one of the
Chucky.
most iconic horror characters of all time. And
Bro,
I think a lot of that,
no, go ahead.
yeah.
I was gonna say, as a kid, the one villain that I remember in my elementary school, all kids were scared of was Chucky. I remember one girl in my school was so scared you didn't even bring up Chucky's name in front of her just because, like you said, dolls really unnerve people like that.
Oh yeah, I remember just a random funny story when I was like in first grade. My best friend at the time was terrified of Chucky. And one time while we were doing like a little class assignment, he went up to use the bathroom while he was gone. I like pulled up an image of Chucky on his computer, and then when he came back, he got jump scared.
Goodness, people get scared. So I mean that one's kind of up there, but the other two that I was gonna mention, that's like you see it all the time. Now these ones compared to like the Living Doll, these two I don't understand why they're always used a lot. Just because I feel like we're all sick of them. Is be careful what you wish for, and then luck-based stories. The idea of being unlucky or getting some luck-based cursed object or thing on you. Those two also appear all the time, and I can't find the appeal of those. They just get done. But I think the biggest reason why they keep getting done is Stein. I think Stein's influence kind of influences others to keep doing it because, even when you read Stein Tinglers now, every single Stein Tinglers book, he at least has a couple stories, which is be careful what you wish for, and then luck based. So it might just be his influence alone.
So when you say be careful what you wish for, are you talking about the trope itself, or are you talking about the three wish layout? The three wishes.
Like the idea of making a wish, like specifically,
okay, I got you.
like specifically, you have to make a wish in the story, and then that's how it's triggered, not just the theme.
Wish goes bad, right?
Yeah. You have to make actual wish in the plot, and then that's how it gets triggered.
Take a shot for every single wish-based story in anthology horror. We'll be here all night.
Even
there's
Slapstick,
so many.
like even Slapstick, she had to literally make a wish by tapping on her forehead 3 times and then getting it. So it's like,
Yeah. You got iconic horror movies that are being, gallivanted into the mainstream these days, saying that they're most creative things ever, like Obsession. Wish-based story. Be careful what you wish
one wish
for.
will,
That's all the story is.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, it's never ending, right? But there has to be some appeal in, like, you get what you deserve, or, you know, be careful what you wish for. Think through your thoughts. There's something that I think, you know, what was his name, W. Jacobs, when he created the monkey's paw, which people always say this created the be careful what you wish for trope. No, I think it goes back to Arabian Nights. You can go all the way back.
Well,
They've
gins,
had the trope for
gins
years
have
and
been
years and
around
years.
for a while.
It's been around forever. Be careful what you wish for is just a very easy yet lazy way to have some sort of substantive back for your story. And it's super easy to write. You can think of any old wish that can go bad, like ending world hunger. But you can think, like, what would that entail? You would have to create so much food that it will overtake the planet, right? So, you know, that's the easiest route to write a story. Like, think of something that sounds good on paper, but that can go horribly wrong. Think of one way it can go wrong and just harp on that. That's how easy it is to write these stories, right? Now, it usually comes down to execution. A lot of the times, you know, there's common ones like jealous lovers, like you wish for love, right? And then they become obsessed with you. Or you get one that where, you know, you get the three wish formula, and then it's almost always, the first one's an accidental wish, the second one goes bad, and the third one, you have to make sure it's good to fix the whole situation and redo all the bad that you've done, right? That's the trope. And that's the one I see most in kids' horror is the three wish formula. I can't stand it. It's always the same song and dance, and it's
You can't even
never
take
done
you
good.
can't even take a shot from me, Tom. 'Cause, like, if you think about it, like, I know Comp, you and I know, it's like every Goosebumps knockoff has always had a wish based book in it. So, like, imagine how much content that is.
It's unfathomable on
Yeah.
how many stories out there rely on just blanket. We're gonna make a wish. It's gonna magically come true. Whatever. It does get exhausting. It really does. Um, as far as the other one that you brought, what was the other one that you brought up?
Luck based. There's always
Luck
some type of
based.
luck
That's
based
kind of
story.
in tandem, I think, like Locker 13 and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
sometimes they overlap.
Sometimes they overlap, but I do think
The
that
luck one though is usually about some cursed object. Usually that's the trigger. Because sometimes the wish one's not always an object. It's just more so you have to verbalize a wish. And this one, it's usually they'll give you some object, and it's supposed to be like a reverse four-leaf clover type of thing.
yeah, like it's supposed to be like good luck, but it's actually like causing you more harm. Like, there's some classic examples in kids horror. Um, but yeah, I think both of those are overdone. I was actually going to say this, and I'm surprised nobody brought it up. It's the haunted house slash ghost best friend story or ghost fake friend story. You know how many times that's been done in kids horror, where you go to a haunted house and then
Like
they meet a
sympathetic ghost,
ghost.
you mean?
Sympathetic ghost stories,
Oh
that
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Just ghost stories. When I was a kid, I used to be really into ghost stories, but as I became a kids horror aficionado, anytime I see kids horror and ghosts, I immediately I'm like, oh, I audibly gasp because it's almost always the same stuff. It's one of three things. It's sympathetic ghost stories. You get a fake ghost best friend that pretends to be your friend, but is actually trying to blackmail you, or you're going to become a ghost at the end. Or three, it's a generic haunted house story that tries to replicate Shirley Jackson, but ends up being Arlstein's Headless Ghost, just done over and over and over again with creaking floorboards and cobwebby attics and stuff like that. It's just lame, lame stuff like that. And
You know
that
what's the
stuff
funny
is
thing about
overdone.
ghost stories and kids horror is that actually with adult horror, a lot of the best books and short stories and like movies and episodes I've seen have been haunted house or ghost stories. So adult horror does it well when there's like no bar, no limit. But kids horror, for some reason, it always translates into, like you mentioned, the same type of cheesy stuff.
Yeah, especially in Are You Afraid of the Dark. We got to throw some
Oh,
shade on this podcast, Are You Afraid of the Dark, at least once. I think we already done it at least once tonight, but I'm going to do it again. The sympathetic ghost stories, there are some good ones in Dark, like Shiny Red Bicycle. But then you get shit like, oh God, you get like Hungry Hounds. It's terrible. You get fucking,
Jagged Sign or whatever.
Jagged Sign, Lonely Ghost. Uh, you know, take a, what is it? Locker 22. The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on with that show with just ghost stories. I've gotten to the point where I just find ghost stories in general and kids horror to be lame unless they're doing stuff that is experimental. Prime example would be like if they went more young adult with it, like I don't know, you go Jake Skinner, Dead Body. That's a cool ghost story,
Secret
right?
admirer.
Secret Admirer, where they actually have a threat that is not just a haunted house.
And the ghostly stare with the body switching, graveyard ghouls as well, stuff like that.
You know, graveyard ghouls, stuff like that. But most of the time it's just that it's as generic as it sounds. It's
Mhm.
like, or you get the variant of like why I'm not afraid of ghosts, or something like that, where you get like or my best friend's invisible, where you meet a ghost friend and he's like a fake Casper, Casper the friendly ghost. Like, oh, you're my friend. Oh, but you keep doing these bad things to me. You're like a fake friend, and it turns out that they got some ulterior motive with you. That's been overdone so many
Well,
times now.
even recently with the most latest entry we had was the last sleepover, and that one was, a threatening ghost, and then became different,
It
more
became
friendly
different, yeah.
towards the end. So
But yeah, like that's why I was, more nicer to that story than most ghost stories, is that I at least tried to have a different angle. Showing the ghost POV, showing, why I'm not afraid of ghosts, but actually a good angle with it. Um, but yeah, ghost stories I think are overdone. Micah, do you have anything that you think is overdone?
Hmm. And maybe alien stories, I would say, because like you really alien stories you get so many of those. Like even like Goosebumps: The Vanishing was a full alien story. You got I'm not even sure what like classics. The classic series had like Egg Monsters from Mars. I guess if you count twist, I guess I don't know if you're not technically alien stories, but because of the twist, you got Welcome to Camp Nightmare, and like Best Friend is Invisible. Just like there's a bunch of like Series 2000 and onwards. There's so many alien stories, and while it's not as overused as some of the ones you guys have mentioned, I feel like there's only so much you can do with an alien story in some capacity, especially in a kids horror realm. In an adult horror realm, you definitely have a lot more freedom to do
Yeah, because
stuff, but with
you can
kids
go
horror,
violent, yeah, or go like
yep.
like more out there with it. Kids horror, like it almost always ends up being one of two variants. You gotta believe me or ET.
yeah,
Almost
corny.
always.
That's why I was gonna say, if there's a good way to do aliens, there's a way to do good aliens. But kids horror never goes this route. Never goes this route. Never does
No.
this. They always go either, as you mentioned, ET, or, and again, a big part of it is Stein's fault. The idea of cheesy aliens. Aliens can't be scary. Aliens have to be your friend. They have to be goofy. They have to be wonky. Again, no. There's a million things you can do that are way scarier. But, I do agree with you that it's just a lazy approach of kids horror.
I think the only unique aliens, like the only two alien stories I can think of that actually stand out are Creatures from Beyond, and then the Alien Under My Bed from Shadow Zone. Those are the only two alien stories I've read that
Brain Juice
actually
I haven't
venture
read,
off into
but
the
people
unique
say Brain
territory.
Juice as well.
Brain Juice as well. Brain Juice is more of like an
And
allegorical
Alien
story.
Candy. Alien Candy's
Yep, Alien
episode.
Candy,
And
I was about to
Alien
bring up.
Candy's like calling all creeps, right?
Yeah.
But even calling all creeps is kind of falling down into like new kid tropes and like, like fish out of water stories. It borrows a
But they
lot
were
from
at least
that.
scary. They were at least scary.
Yeah, but when I read something like Creatures from Beyond, and
Mm-hmm.
to see like how like it starts off as like a summer vacation story that seems like an alien invasion that turns into something completely like out of like a basically a Saw movie. Like I'm just like, what? This is cool for kids horror, like you don't see this often. But when I read like stuff like Invasion of the Body Squeezers, and I'm being barraged with "You Gotta Believe Me," that's just common in alien stories. Like the sky is falling. There's flying saucers in my backyard. There's an alien next door neighbor. Like this is all I ever see when it comes to aliens for the most part. Even in like stuff like Spine Tinglers, and you read like an alien story, you got a lot of that trope constantly barraging your story. And you have to get past that to get to the good action. And sometimes you'll get fun action, like My Teacher is a Bug. That stuff is kind of fun. You got alien bugs, right? You
Plant
don't get
people
much,
from Strange Matter.
strange matter, right? You might have some out there ideas when you get authors willing to experiment. Um, but Aliens, I would say, I think they get an unfair rap, but it's also deserved because if you look at the whole spectrum of Aliens, it's like E.T., You Gotta Believe Me, or it's like what Shiv said, right? It's the same old stuff most of the time.
Yeah, they gotta stop with that big gray head alien thing too. I'm so sick of that. I'm tired of the grays, those big gray head. Like adult horror at least is branched up, and man, kids horror. Anytime there's an alien story, especially in some knockoff or in some short story collection, expect them to be little green men or some big gray headed ones. Like from American Dad, those type of shits.
And I will say, there are some good ones that like you can never go wrong. Like if you keep doing the same thing over and over again. And I will say this, right? It's usually object possessing the wearer stuff for me, and then like I don't know, body swapping stuff like in the vein of like I don't know, you look at Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls or Ghost Camp, stuff like that. That stuff is usually good, like for horror.
And
Mine's
and I would argue creature features. Pretty much
creature
always the same.
features.
Those ones same type of setup, but usually they have good threats that make it entertaining.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Another overused villain is like the cursed object.
yeah. We kind of touched on that, but yeah, the cursed object.
Mhm.
Yeah,
but it also depends what the cursed objects are used for. Sometimes they can be some more crazier stuff, but like we
Hmm.
mentioned, the luck based one. That's
Yep.
usually always the one they go for.
so to kind of end it off, if there's one thing that you hardly ever see in kids horror that you want done, what would it be?
That one's tough.
One
Um,
thing.
that's a tough question. I'm trying.
Or maybe
Honestly,
something,
like,
maybe something from adult horror to bring over.
So this one's
I
kind of
mean,
bland. You go ahead, Mike. I'll go next.
oh, because I was gonna say it's like I guess one thing we've seen a bit in kids horror, but we don't get a lot of it. I mean, I would love to see more body horror stuff with kids horror media because we get a handful of body horror stories here and there, but you never really see the full extent of it. Obviously, you can't go gruesome with it because like adult horror could. But there's still unique ways I feel like you could do kids body horror that haven't been explored yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mine was kind of playing off like what I remember from the creepy creations of Professor Shock's GYG, Beast from the East, and again I have the books here, but the setup of most of these, which is that I kind of want to end Cave. Cave is coming out next a few days, but the idea of kids getting trapped in another world, I really like the idea and always the setup of not just kids, but from adult horror when characters are trapped in a world that they're unfamiliar with because then it doesn't have to play by earth logic. You can have all types of horrors. You can have all types of unfamiliar settings and isolations. And, a lot of the time when you see characters, get taken to a different place, even though the execution was not that good, but the idea of Jumanji getting sucked in the game, Journey to the Center of the Earth, and that the King Kong movie and all these places. It's just the idea of you're always paranoid. You're always the idea that anything can kill you, anything can take you out, and at the same time, there's always the big bad. That one big bad lurking threat. I think that the uncertainty and the stakes just naturally rises up whenever the character's off Earth or goes to an unfamiliar location. That'd be mine.
Yeah. I would like that too. I guess for me, and I know this kind of destroys modern relatability by doing this, but I would totally love to see different time periods used more in kids' horror.
I was just gonna mention
That'd be
that.
cool.
I've always thought, why are people playing around with stories about setting a kid in like, Victorian age New England in the late 1800s and having
Wild
like a
West.
or out in the West, or setting them in, I don't know, the medieval past. We kind of get that in stuff like Terror Tower and maybe Heads You Lose every once in a while, but like having more like historical like time period stories, like maybe like a BC story, like going actually back to the ancient Egypt, right? More stuff like that, like on a consistent basis, and not just go into the tropes. Like if we go into ancient times, it has to be Egypt, Or we go into ancient times and it has to be Hercules. You know, do something like, you know, different than that, but you know, make it like relatable in the sense that you write the characters in a relatable way. You don't have to like it doesn't necessarily have to mean that they're into video games and talking to girls. I mean, they can talk to girls or like a girl in 800 BC. Why do we got to constantly set stuff in the 2000s, 2010s, right? Just shake it up every once in a while. I would like to see that more. And I think you can do way more ideas that you couldn't do by trapping yourself with modern times, because then you're kind of forced to do creature feature, monster of the week, like aliens, like you know, same old song and dance, haunted house stories. You know, old man Withers' house down the street. You know, got some busted, you know, windows. Let's go break in and see what ghosts we meet. You know, stuff like that. Like I don't want that all the time. You know.
I think the historical thing also plays. I think your and I point kind of play together too. It's like the idea of you're not familiar with the world. You don't have to play by logic. Because like even we're talking about Cave coming out next few days. It's about a kid getting sent to Triassic with the dinosaurs. They have to learn how to survive. It's like if you get sent to the Wild West, if you get sent to the Victorian era, you're not playing by modern rules. You have to play by their rules. It's a whole different world, and it might as well be a foreign world because you're completely unfamiliar with how things went during that time. So, that's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing of you take a kid out of what they're used to, they have to learn how to fend for themselves and do what they have to do. But in the modern age, man, you got smartphones and parental guidance and people, man, it takes away some of the stakes.
I know, and like there's so many cool ideas. Like if you're going to do a comic-based story, and let's say the kid's into horror comics, set the story in 1950s. You don't even have to go that far back. Just set it in a different decade. You know, if they're into like slasher, set it in the 80s. You know, even though that's kind of cliche, it's still fun. I mean, it makes sense. Like,
And
why
if
does
you're
a
doing
kid's
like
war do
a
that?
if you're doing like an ocean horror story, easy way to do it is like yes, you could do a story where kid goes to a beach, kid goes to a pool, whatever, but have them go back with the pirates. They end up in the era of
Yeah.
the pirates, and they have to sail with you get Pirates of the Caribbean for kids. That adventure mixed with the horror, that'd be fun.
You know, coming to think about it, I think probably, you know, if there's any hurdle for an author wanting to do it, it's probably they don't want to risk going into cliches, and that's
They also
sometimes
don't want
what
to
you're kind of
research.
that's kind of what you're forced to put at the door with when you're doing time periods. Is like, of course, there's gonna be cliches with the time period, right? You kind of have to like accept that, like to go into it, but I think authors should give it more like a fair shot, right? I think it would really surprise folks like if they wanted to do like a monster based story set in World War II, like like Shadows in the Cloud, the Gremlin. They wanted to have a flying gremlin monster. Set the kid in during World War II.
Or Horrors of War, or that one
Horrors of war,
Predator's
stuff like
Heart from
that.
Creepshow, the book.
Think about all the possibilities of stuff you see in adult horror that can just translate into kids horror in a cool way, right? That'll be kind of innovative, right? People like doing that on a consistent basis. Time periods is a pretty reasonable thing, but nobody does it. I
And
don't
if
get
if you
it.
and the good thing about mixing supernatural with historical is they don't have advanced tech, so there's much more of an inherent struggle to face that threat. Because like compared to let's say you have a ghost story in the Victorian era, well now I got my cell phone. Now we got we've seen it in kids horror where you have ghost reader equipment, you have these boxes, you have all these things that you use for ghosts. Well, back in that day, a lot of the Victorian style haunted house stories were so successful because of the fact that not only is it creepy, but you don't have tech. You kind of just have to be stuck in that house and deal with it, and no one's gonna believe you. You kind of just have to, survive the night, for however
Yeah.
long you can.
Or like you get like a Midnight Madness type of story where it's a silent black and white movie. Just set it
Yeah.
in the 1920s. Right, just move it back. You know,
Oh, dude, if we could get an episode where a kid gets sent back to the 50s or whatever, or like 40s, and it's Twilight Zone black and white style, like they put on a filter and the kid is like going through, man, that'd be so cool, bro. I would
it
love
would be
something like
cool.
that.
Yeah, exactly,
It
right?
would be.
Like it seems like a layup, right? You think an author like maybe some smaller indie guys might be watching this. Who knows? Maybe in the next year or two, we might be seeing some time period stories out there. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's
Never
see
know.
if we get some other world stories. Come on, bring it on.
Give it to us. Stein won't do it.
He's not gonna do it. Do you have anything else we want to add before we get off?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, that wraps up episode 46 of Goose Junkies. Thank you, everyone, for coming back to our comeback episode. We don't have anything planned, I don't think, for episode 47, so just stay tuned. We're going to surprise you all. But I promise it's going to be a face-off, and it's going to be a good one. We're going to pick a fun one to do. We have a big old laundry list, and we still have lots to cover. So if you have any suggestions of things that we haven't covered, maybe we might take that into consideration before going into the next one. If you're not currently subscribed to this channel where you can get all Goose Junkies episodes and stay up to date on the newest podcast when it drops, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. I have a whole playlist of all the Goose Junkies podcast episodes on this channel for your listening pleasure. Or if you like watching it and seeing us react to things, you can do that as well. Also, if you're not subscribed to the Ultimate Goosebumps Man or the Horrorlander, they're going to be co-authors on this video, so you can click on their profiles and their channels through here. Please go drop a subscribe on their channels as well if you're not currently subscribed. That goes a long way to help us all grow here. And I'll also put links to other affiliates of the Goose Junkies podcast in the comment section and the description down below for you to check out as well. Anything else to say before we head out?
Nope. Stay tuned for next time.
Stay tuned for next time,
thank
y'all.
you guys for watching.
Yeah, thank you for watching. It really means a lot to us, and we can't wait to bring back discussion on kids horror because it's been a long time. All right, take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Deuces.